One of the most widely celebrated holidays in the United States is Thanksgiving Day, on the fourth Thursday of November. The celebration is traditionally associated with the landing of the Pilgrims in the 17th century. It didn't become an annual national holiday until the Civil War, but the holiday has an international history that dates back to ancient times. Feast days were held in virtually all ancient religions, but the American Thanksgiving can be traced back most clearly to the feasts of ancient Israel. The Old Testament ordained 3 yearly week-long festivals for worship and rejoicing, as well as commanding feasts every Sabbath and every new moon. Under Christendom, the Roman Catholics established a calendar with virtually every day in the year being a feast day for a different saint. With the Reformation, the Protestants abolished these feast days except for the celebration of the Lord's Day. Instead, special days would be declared for either fasting and prayer when there was a calamity or feasting for a day of Thanksgiving. The first day of Thanksgiving in America wasn't held by the Pilgrims. Several locations argue that they were the site of the first Thanksgiving, including a landing by the Spanish in Florida and Berkeley Hundred in Virginia, where May 14th was established as a yearly holy day to commemorate the arrival of the ships there in 1607. But Berkeley was abandoned after the Great Indian Massacre in 1622, in which 1/3 of the population of Virginia was killed. But the real foundation of our modern Thanksgiving, at least in popular memory, was the one held by the Pilgrims in 1621. The Calvinist separatists, or Pilgrims as they are known today, had come to Plymouth seeking religious freedom, to establish a new colony, and to evangelize the Indians. They had a hard time of it the first few years, as they tried to start life in the New World while trying a form of communism that would eventually be abolished. But once they had a good harvest in 1621, and in what was a bright spot in Pilgrim-Indian relations, they shared a multi-day feast with them. One Pilgrim, Edward Winslow, wrote of the celebration in Mort's relation. "Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men on fowling, so that we might after a special manner rejoice together after we had gathered the fruits of our labor. They 4 in one day killed as much fowl as, with a little help beside, served the company almost a week. At which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and among the rest, their great king Massasoit, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted, and they went out and killed 5 deer, which we brought to the plantation and bestowed on our governor, and upon the captain and others. And although it was not always so plentiful as it was at this time with us, yet by the goodness of God we are so far from want that we often wish you partakers of our plenty." Although the famous Thanksgiving feast did happen, there are many myths associated with it. The Pilgrims wouldn't have had a modern Thanksgiving feast. For one thing, they wouldn't have had turkey. Also, the Pilgrims would have dressed in more lively colors than usually depicted. And although in summer the natives would not have worn many clothes, it's cold in Massachusetts that time of year, so they would have been fully clothed. This harvest festival was not a yearly occurrence, but it eventually became an annual celebration in Connecticut in 1647 and Massachusetts in 1680. The focus was on thanking God and rejoicing in the bounty that He had given. States continued to declare days of fasting or Thanksgiving upon important occasions. The first national day of Thanksgiving was declared by Congress for December 18, 1777, to confess their sins and adore the superintending providence of Almighty God, to acknowledge with gratitude their obligation to Him for benefits received, and to implore such farther benefits as they stand in need of. The first Thanksgiving under the Constitution was declared by George Washington for Thursday, November 26, 1789, to thank God for the establishment of the nation, the victory during the war, and to pray for forgiveness for the sins of the nation, among other things. Special days of Thanksgiving continued to be called by various presidents. In the beginning of the 19th century, several states declared annual days of Thanksgiving, but this practice was limited to the northern states. Sarah Joseph Hale, author of Mary Had a Little Lamb, launched a campaign to make it a national holiday. This was finally done by Abraham Lincoln in 1863, while the nation was torn apart by the Civil War. By 1900, the Pilgrims and Indians had been firmly established as the icons of Thanksgiving. Lincoln appointed the last Thursday of November as Thanksgiving, choosing Thursday as that had become the tradition for Thanksgiving celebrations. Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to change the traditional date Thanksgiving was celebrated in 1939. He was convinced by Fred Lazarus Jr., founder of what is now Macy's, to move the holiday 1 week earlier to give stores an extra week to advertise Christmas goods, as they didn't want to do it before Thanksgiving. The Republicans hated the change and called the holiday Franksgiving. For several years, the Republicans celebrated Thanksgiving on the last Thursday of November, the Democrats the week before. In 1942, Congress passed a compromise, making Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday of November, which sometimes is the last and sometimes the second to last. States gradually switched over the next few years until all adopted the new schedule, which remains in effect to this day. The holiday is declared as a day of Thanksgiving by the President of the United States every year. But the holiday has lost most of its religious significance, instead becoming Turkey Day, a day of feasting, family gatherings, parades, and watching football. Some still remember it as a day of thanks, but in establishing it as a yearly holiday, most people have forgotten that it is first and foremost a day to give thanks to God for the blessings given. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share it with your friend. You can also visit www.discerninghistory.com for more videos and other resources.